The sound of the cake hitting the floor echoed through the decorated living room. Bits of blue frosting splattered across the hardwood, and my 6-year-old son James' Spider-Man cake lay in ruins. The silence that followed was deafening. "You're not good enough to be in this family," my mother-in-law, Barbara, screamed, her face red with rage. "My son deserves better than this pathetic excuse for a party." I stood there stunned as 30 pairs of eyes darted between Barbara and me. James' little friends huddled together, some on the verge of tears. My son clutched his best friend Tommy's arm, his lower lip trembling. "What kind of mother throws such a cheap party?" Barbara continued, gesturing wildly at the homemade decorations I'd spent weeks creating. "And that cake, from a local bakery instead of Ellison's. Everyone knows Ellison's is the only acceptable choice for a Mitchell family celebration. I'm Sarah Mitchell, and at 32, I never thought I'd be watching my mother-in-law destroy my son's birthday party. For 6 years, I'd endured her constant criticism, her snide remarks about my middle-class background, her endless comparisons to my husband, David's ex-girlfriend from the right kind of family. But this was a new low. My grandson deserves the best." Barbara's voice dripped with contempt as she kicked at the fallen cake. "Not some teacher's salary attempt at a party." I felt a gentle tug at my sleeve. James looked up at me, tears streaming down his face. "Mommy, why does Grandma hate my party? I loved my Spider-Man cake." Something inside me shifted. The room seemed to still, and a strange calm washed over me. I knelt beside my son, wiping his tears away. "You're right," I said loud enough for Barbara to hear. "My son does deserve better." Barbara's triumphant smirk faltered slightly at my calm tone. She'd expected tears, maybe shouting, her usual victory over the daughter-in-law she never wanted. Instead, I smiled. "Everyone," I announced to the room, "I'm so sorry, but we'll have to cut this party short. Please take your goodie bags and we'll arrange a proper celebration soon." As the shell-shocked parents collected their children, I caught sight of my husband, David, finally emerging from his home office. He conveniently disappeared when his mother arrived, his usual tactic for avoiding conflict. His face paled at the scene before him. "Mom? Sarah? What happened?" Barbara immediately launched into her version of events. "David, darling, I was just explaining to your wife about proper Mitchell family standards. You can't expect our grandson to have some ordinary party like he's from," she wrinkled her nose, "public school." I watched my husband's face, waiting for him to defend his son's ruined party. Instead, he ran his hands through his hair, his standard stress response. "Maybe Mom has a point, Sarah. We could have gone a bit more upscale." And there it was, the same pattern we'd lived with since our wedding day. David, ever the devoted son, unable to stand up to his mother. Barbara, the wealthy widow who controlled her only child through guilt and family legacy. And me, the outsider who could never measure up. But this time was different. This time, she'd hurt my son. As the last guest left, I turned to Barbara with the same calm smile. "You know what? You've opened my eyes. James does deserve better. He deserves a grandmother who values his happiness over appearances. He deserves a father who'll stand up for him. And he deserves a mother who won't let anyone make him feel less than perfect." Barbara's face reddened further. "How dare you? After everything we've done for you, living in our family's guest house, the job at Mitchell Industries, you'd be nothing without us." I picked up my son, who buried his face in my neck. "David, I'm taking James to my sister's. We'll discuss this later." As I walked toward the door, Barbara called out, "This is exactly why you don't belong in this family. Just wait until the country club hears about this. You'll regret this, Sarah." I turned back one last time. "No, Barbara, you'll regret this. Because you're right, I'm not good enough for the Mitchell family. I'm better." Driving to my sister Kate's house, I couldn't help but smile. Barbara had no idea what she just set in motion. For years, I kept quiet about the trust fund my grandmother left me, the one that would mature on my 35th birthday or when I had a child who turned 6, whichever came first. I kept quiet about my silent partnership in the local business incubator that had helped launch 3 successful startups. I played the role of the modest teacher, living in the Mitchell family guest house, accepting their charity because David insisted it was easier than fighting his mother, all because I believed in giving James a peaceful childhood. But now it was time to show Barbara exactly what not good enough looked like. My phone buzzed with another angry text from her. Something about teaching me my place in society. I glanced at James in the rearview mirror, now sleeping peacefully after his emotional day. "Don't worry, baby," I whispered. "Mommy's about to teach Grandma a very important lesson about what really makes someone worthy." The next morning, my phone exploded with notifications. Barbara had been busy, posting a carefully crafted version of events on social media, painting herself as the concerned grandmother trying to give her grandson a proper celebration. The country club wives were already commenting with their sympathetic emojis and thinly veiled insults about certain people not understanding tradition. I sat at my sister Kate's kitchen table, scrolling through the messages while she made breakfast for James and her kids. David had called 17 times, each voicemail more desperate than the last. "Sarah, please come home. Mom's just, you know how she gets. She says she'll apologize." "Honey, you're being unreasonable. It was just a cake. Mom's threatening to talk to the board about your position at the school foundation." That last one made me smile. Barbara had no idea she was about to lose her favorite weapon, financial control. "You're taking this remarkably well," Kate said, sliding a cup of coffee across the table. Usually, Barbara's antics have you stress baking for days. I showed her the latest post from Barbara, a throwback photo of David with his ex-girlfriend Victoria at some charity gala, captioned "Remembering simpler times when family meant something." "Because this time, I'm done playing her game," I replied, pulling out my laptop. "Remember that trust fund Grandma Sophie left me?" Kate's eyes widened. "The one you never told David about because you wanted to be sure he wasn't marrying you for money." "Well, James turned 6 yesterday. Right before his party, I got the email from Mr. Patterson. The trust is active, and it's grown significantly more than we expected." I turned the screen to show her the balance. Kate nearly spilled her coffee. "Holy Sarah. That's more than the Mitchell family lost in their last 3 failed business ventures combined," I finished. "And that's not counting my shares in the startup incubator." Just then, my phone buzzed with a text from Linda, my contact at the business incubator. "Board meeting leaked. Mitchell Industries trying to buy controlling interest in TechFront. Hostile takeover planned for next week." TechFront was one of our most successful startups, a cybersecurity firm that had recently caught the attention of several major investors. What Barbara didn't know was that I owned 30% of the shares through my anonymous investment group. "Time to make some calls," I said, standing up. "Can James stay here a bit longer?" Kate hugged me tight. "Take all the time you need. Show that woman what a public school teacher can do." An hour later, I sat in Mr. Patterson's office, signing papers that would change everything. My grandmother's trust fund had grown to just over $4.2 million, and with my other investments, I had more than enough to put my plan into action. The offer on the lakeside property was accepted, Mr. Patterson said, sliding another document across his desk. The previous owner was quite motivated to sell once he heard about Mitchell Industries' interests. I signed the papers with a steady hand. The lakeside property was Barbara's dream acquisition, 20 acres of prime real estate she'd been trying to buy for her planned country club expansion. Now it was mine. My phone buzzed again. "Barbara, I hope you're ready to apologize," she said without preamble. "David's beside himself, and quite frankly, your behavior is embarrassing. Though what else could we expect from your background?" "Actually, Barbara, I wanted to thank you," I replied calmly. "Thank me?" She sounded suspicious. "Yes, you were right. James deserves better. That's why I've just bought the lakeside property. I hear it's perfect for a new children's museum. Something educational, open to everyone, even public school children." The silence on the other end was deafening. That's impossible. You can't afford." David would have told me if. "Oh, and Barbara, you might want to hold off on that tech front takeover. I'd hate for anyone to discover Mitchell Industries' financial troubles, especially the board." I could practically hear her mind racing, trying to figure out how I knew about their secret plans. "Who are you?" she whispered. "Just a public school teacher who loves her son," I replied. "But you were right about one thing. I'm not good enough for the Mitchell family. I'm actually much, much better. Give David my love." I hung up as Barbara spluttered on the other end. Within minutes, my phone was flooded with texts from David. "What's going on? Mom's hysterical. Where did you get that kind of money? The lakeside property? Sarah, how could you do this to my family? I looked at his messages, thinking about all the times he'd stood silent while his mother belittled me, all the times he'd chosen her comfort over his son's happiness. "You're right," I texted back. "Family does mean something. That's why I'm protecting ours. James and mine. When you're ready to do the same, you know where to find us." As I drove back to Kate's house, I thought about James' ruined birthday party. Barbara had tried to teach him that love was measured in designer cakes and country club appearances. Instead, she'd given me the perfect opportunity to show him what really matters: standing up for yourself and protecting the people you love. My phone buzzed one more time. A message from Victoria, David's ex-girlfriend, in response to Barbara's throwback photo. "Some of us grow up and realize money can't buy class. Or love. Stay strong, Sarah." I smiled, thinking of the press release going out tomorrow about the new children's museum. Barbara had no idea this was just the beginning. A week after the birthday party disaster, I sat in the conference room of TechFront, watching Barbara's world crumble through the glass windows of the boardroom. She had just learned that not only had her hostile takeover failed, but Mitchell Industries was now facing a potential investigation into its business practices. "This is impossible," she kept repeating, her perfectly manicured hands shaking as she clutched her designer handbag. How did everything fall apart so quickly? I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. The board members filed out, leaving just Barbara, David, and me. David looked like he had aged 10 years in a week, his familiar stress response now permanently etched between his brows. "You've ruined us," Barbara spat, turning on me. "Everything we built, everything we—" "No, Barbara," I interrupted calmly. "You did that yourself. Every manipulative move, every attempt to control everyone around you. It was all documented, just waiting for the right moment." David finally spoke up, his voice hoarse. "Why didn't you tell me about the trust fund? About any of it?" I turned to my husband, seeing him clearly for the first time in years. Would it have mattered? Would you have stood up to her then, when you couldn't even stand up for your son? Barbara made a choking sound. "Don't you dare blame David. He's been nothing but generous, letting you live in our guest house, giving you connections." "Letting me," I laughed. "Barbara, I could have bought that guest house 5 times over. I stayed because I thought giving James a relationship with his grandmother was worth enduring your cruelty. I was wrong." Just then, the door opened and James peeked in, followed by Kate. His face lit up when he saw me, then fell slightly at the sight of his father and grandmother. "Perfect timing," I said, lifting him onto my lap. "James, remember how you said you wanted to help other kids have amazing birthday parties?" He nodded enthusiastically. "Well, guess what? The new Children's Museum is going to have a special birthday celebration room where kids whose families can't afford big parties can have their special day for free. And it's all because of you." Barbara's face contorted. "You're using our family's dream property for charity? This is unacceptable. David, do something." But David was watching James, who was excitedly telling Kate about his ideas for the birthday room. Something shifted in his expression. "No, Mom," he said quietly, "I won't." Barbara's head snapped around so fast I thought she might get whiplash. "What did you say?" I said no. David stood up straighter. "Sarah's right. I've let you control everything for too long. I watched you ruin my son's birthday, hurt my wife countless times, and I did nothing. That stops now." "After everything I've done for you," Barbara began. "That's exactly the problem," David cut in. "Everything comes with strings attached. Every gift, every opportunity, it's all just leverage for you. I'm done." I hadn't expected this from David. For the first time in our marriage, he was choosing us over his mother's approval. Barbara turned an alarming shade of red. "Fine, side with her, but don't come crying to me when she takes everything. Like you tried to take TechFront." I interjected smoothly. "Or the lakeside property. The difference is, I'm not taking anything from you, Barbara. I'm building something new, something that will help people, not just serve your social status." "The Mitchell name," she started. "Will be just fine," I finished, "though maybe it's time for the Mitchell family to be known for something more than money and social climbing." James tugged at my sleeve. "Mommy, can we have another Spider-Man party? A bigger one at the museum when it's ready." "Of course, baby, and this time, no one will ruin it." Barbara stormed out, her heels clicking aggressively against the floor. The sound faded, taking with it years of her oppressive presence in our lives. David sank into a chair, looking both exhausted and relieved. I'm sorry, he said softly. To both of you. I should have stood up to her long ago. Yes, you should have, I agreed. But you can start now. Later that evening, as James played with his cousins at Kate's house, David and I sat on her porch, talking about the future. The new children's museum would open in 6 months. Mitchell Industries would survive, though significantly humbled. And Barbara? She had left 3 voicemails already, cycling through anger, guilt-tripping, and finally, tentative negotiations. She'll never change, will she? David asked, staring into his coffee. Probably not, I replied. But we have. He took my hand, and for the first time in years, I felt like we were truly partners. The trust fund. Why did you keep it secret for so long? I squeezed his hand. Because I needed to know that when the time came, you'd choose our family for the right reasons. Not for money, not for status, but for love. Inside, we could hear James laughing with his cousins, the sound of pure joy, untainted by social expectations or family legacy. You know what, Sarah? David said, smiling. You really are better than the Mitchell family. You're exactly what we needed. I thought about Barbara's words at the birthday party about not being good enough. She had been right, but not in the way she meant. I wasn't good enough to maintain her facade of perfection. I was better. I was real. And that was worth more than all the designer cakes in the world.